everybody. Welcome to the Personal Exit Plan podcast. I am the host, Ron Story Jr., and I'm here with the world's greatest co-host, Darian George. And today we're going to do a frequently asked questions episode where we're going to answer the questions that you've asked us and give you our perspective. We're not 100% right. We're just giving you our perspective. There's going to be variations. You can, base your own experiences. If you have experience that you want to add in the comment section, always feel free to write your personal experience in the comments below if you've had a different experience than what we have. Any things before we get started, Derek?
No, I mean, exactly what he's saying. Make sure to, comment. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and also, more importantly, leave questions. We need comments. We need those questions. That's going to fuel this. And it's okay if you don't agree with us. We don't agree with each other all the time. We disagree all the time, okay? And so even with these questions, and I haven't even seen all of them yet, so this is going to be on the fly, we're going to have some different opinions about what's the best method to achieve these goals. So let's jump into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm Shannon and he's Skip, or he's Skip and I'm Shannon.
Okay, I'm more likely to be Shannon, just based off of the fact that I like Hennessy and Black and Mild. You ever see Shannon Sharp with the Hennessy and Black and Mild? I'm like, man, you're too rich to be smoking Black and Mild.
Yeah. Club Shay, right?
Yeah.
No, that's pretty funny. I like that. Hennessy and Black and Mild. What you got right there, man? Like, don't even say.
No, this is a nice, refreshing beverage to wet my whistles. We got the XO back here. It's running low. I gotta get another one.
All right. Question number one: what was your biggest fear when moving to another country alone?
Man, I mean, my first time moving to another country, I didn't speak any Spanish at the time. So the biggest fear is, I don't know, getting out there and just being lost. I just remember getting to the airport in Costa Rica and everybody was yelling taxi. So you get off the plane, you get there, you're looking for the people that's supposed to be taxi, 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 taxi. So I think the biggest
people was yelling for a taxi, or the taxi people was offering you a taxi?
They were offering me a taxi. And they might have been saying other things, but when you don't understand the language, that's all you hear, right? So that was probably the biggest fear, just getting lost. You realize I traveled before data plans. I traveled before, iPhones and smartphones. So there was no translator on your phone. There was no GPS. It was a lot. So that was probably my biggest fear, just kind of going out there by yourself and getting lost.
What year was that?
That was 2010.
Okay.
So, I mean, iPhone was out, but it's still, it wasn't what it is now.
Yeah. International data wasn't international data either.
Yeah.
So, no, I think that's pretty interesting. So he brings up some great points that now the technology has come to make it a lot more safer, right? Or make you feel a lot more secure. One of the things that I used as a crutch when my biggest fear was people speaking Spanish and I didn't understand what they were talking about. So I was able to use that technological advantage of having Google Translate and all the other different translation apps. I think I got like 8 of them on my phone because I was wanting to download all the apps to make sure like which one will let me talk to people at the same time. Google has a cool one because you can point the camera up at Spanish signs and it'll translate the words right on the screen.
You can do that with a menu. Like if you're at a restaurant, some words won't translate over just because they're so specific to that country, but you can stick the camera right over top of the menu and it's going to tell you what to eat.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. So that was that was his biggest fear was, being a little bit lost and not understanding what people were saying. But that was my fear too. Like, I mean, I'm like, dude, what if somebody kidnapped me and take my kidney like they did in that movie Hostel? Yeah. I'm like, that would be the worst. And so I've never stayed in a hostel. I won't stay in hostels because of that movie. I'm like, in that movie, they cut that dude's foot. I don't want to be walking around here like Captain Morgan,
So some safeguards for that, and we've talked about it before. Always let somebody know where you're going. This is not especially if it's your first time, this is not the impromptu situation. Give somebody an address, give them somebody a contact. Make sure multiple people know where you're going, not just your grandmother who doesn't know how to work technology, because she might panic just because she can't figure out how to use the text messaging system. So
yeah, no, I think that's another thing. That's a great point. Another thing is that before you move to a country, go visit it. Don't, they say stick one toe in the water to see if it's hot before you dive in. Go visit for a weekend. See if you like the environment. Understand what the money is. Learn the exchange rate. Do a trip. Do a weekend trip or a week trip so that you can learn before you just say, yeah, me and my family moving here. That would be pretty crazy. I've kind of cheated because everywhere that I've lived, he's been there first. So if he made it, I'm coming, right? So I let him go ahead and dive in and get it all figured out, and then I came behind him. So That's kind of been my trick.
Yeah,
You know,
I met some expats that have done some interesting decisions. I'll give an example without mentioning any names, but it was a single mother who took a leap of faith and moved. I think it was right when Trump got elected, so a lot of people were just jumping ship. And she moved with her daughter, and she had no plan. And it was one of those situations to where I let her stay at my spot for a couple of days just because she's kind of just out here. Had no data plan on her phone, didn't have really enough money to get around, didn't speak the language, and so she ran into a situation to where it wasn't economically viable to be there. And I said to say, make sure you have a plan. So a lot of your fears can be subverted if you plan accordingly. Take a trip there first. Know some people on the land. Make sure you have the funds to be able to travel. So I think you can get those things. So that's not a concern at all.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. So part of that plan leads us into the next question. How did you overcome the language barrier if you don't speak the native language of the country?
That is a really good one. I would say globally, and this is going to sound very, very North American, United States. People don't like calling each other American here.
Estadounidesian.
Yeah, Estadounidense of us. But English is like the language of currency. Most places have people that speak English, or they will try to speak English with you. With that said, if you go, Spanish and English aren't that different when you look at it. To be honest, you can read and body language is very important. You can point at almost anything. I would say if you're going to China, Middle East for the most part speaks English. I know they speak Arabic, but they speak English. You go to China, Mandarin doesn't look anything like English.
Mandarin doesn't look anything like Mandarin.
Yeah. I mean, Mandarin and Cantonese is different. Like most people, like you speak Chinese, there's no such language as Chinese. They have two different languages, and even depending on the region, it sounds different. And it's a tonal language, to where if you pronounce something up instead of down, you didn't change the whole meaning. You went from asking for groceries to, can I kick your mother? Yeah. And it's like, oh, hold on, what? You're offending people? With that said, I know people that have traveled to all of these places with the language barriers. One thing is technology. I mean, you have the advantage of Google Translate. Also, just doing some research before you get there. Learn the bus routes or the train routes before you leave out. Make sure you have it mapped out so you can get from point A to point B without having to be able to read the signs.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. And then hop in Facebook groups. Hop in a Facebook group for expats. So when you land, you'll know some people that speak English right from the beginning, and they can tell you how they kind of hacked the system and the systems that they built for themselves, so that you're just not out there floundering, lost. I mean, that's been one of the biggest helps. Is I've had someone on the ground when I got there. No matter whether they knew more about it or whatever, they had been there longer than I had been there to help out. One of the things we tried to do, which was stupid, we tried to go to Haiti and didn't know nothing about French. We was like, we'll find somebody that knows French. Oh, we knew nobody that knew French.
And not only is it just French, they speak Haitian Creole, which is another situation. I took one semester of French in college and dropped out because it was going to bring down my GPA. And I don't have any special talents with the language. That's why I tell people, I learned Spanish. Anybody can learn Spanish. I say that to say, yeah, that was about to be bad. Luckily, we couldn't go because the time didn't allow us to. We ended up going to countryside out there. But yeah, that was interesting. But the language, don't let that be a barrier. Mm-hmm. I think don't also stop trying to learn. At least learn the greetings. Even if it's going to be Mandarin, even if it's going to be Arabic, learn the greetings. I know greetings in like 10 different languages. Doesn't mean I can speak them. But it impresses the people. Even when they speak English, they get happy. When I go to gas stations in the States and I know that they're ran by people from the Middle East, sometimes I'll speak a little Arabic with them and they get excited and they just start acting like I invented Arabic. And I'm like, no, that was my intro. That's all I got. That's all I got.
That's it. Grand opening, grand closing, right? No, I think that's a great point. I think Americans at times can be disrespectful to foreigners. And your first experience in another country where you don't speak the language, you get an instant dose of empathy for everybody else that you looked at funny who didn't speak proper English. So that was, you get that instant dose of empathy, like, dang, I wish someone would help me. And then you start flashing back to all the times you made fun of people, So use YouTube, use Google Translate. Those can be great ways to get you more comfortable with the basics, so that you're at least being respectful. Because you're going to get a real dose of reality that you're out of your environment at the beginning, but it becomes more comfortable over time.
I mean, even if you learn the language in a vacuum, right, in a bubble, once you go out in the real world, it's a whole different story. It's Nate Robinson again, boxing in real life. Yeah, we won't get into that. We already did the reaction video. I think about the first time I went to Costa Rica and I tried to order an empanada. And if you've never had empanada before, they're delicious. So I went there the day before with my host family, and they had ordered some at this little local restaurant.
It's like an apple pie thing, right? But they put meat and stuff in it.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. I mean, empanada literally means like breaded, inside bread, because pan is the word that they use for breaded. So it can be different in different countries. So I was going to order an empanada de pollo. I practiced this the whole night. So I'm standing up, like looking in the mirror, empanada de pollo, por favor. Okay, cool. I get to the restaurant the next day. I'm there by myself. I'm like, una empanada de pollo, por favor. And the lady was like, sí, señor, por aquí, por allá. I'm like, what? Wait, what? And then I was like, I have dinero, yo tengo dinero. She's like, sí, señor, pero por aquí para llevar. I'm like, what is she talking about? I asked like 3 more times. I just left. Like, I just booked out. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to get an empanada. I go back, and one of the guys in the house, he understood some English. I was telling him what happened. He's like, oh, para llevar, that's to take away. It's like to take home with you, takeout. I'm like, oh, okay. The next day I go, I'm ready. It's like, una empanada de pollo, por favor. Por aquí, para llevar. Sí, señor, pero caliente. I'm like, oh, no. There's more follow-up questions? Like, stop it. But luckily, somebody had pity on me. I found somebody there that was bilingual, and they helped me, and I finally got my empanada. And so that's why I'm very open to helping people. When people come to visit here, I'm the translator, I'm the tour guide, but I like the fact because I know the struggle. I like the fact that I'm able to help. I like the fact that people can get experiences they wouldn't have if I wasn't here. So that's part of it. But people are, like you said, they'll look out for you. And they'll be happy with the little bit of Spanish that you know if you try it. And they're going to be more empathetic than maybe we would be if they were in our country.
Yeah, exactly. I think empathy is a big thing. Being patient. You're not going to learn the language tomorrow. You're not going to learn it in a year. I mean, you can keep taking the classes and do all of that stuff, and you'll get better, but it's never going to be perfect. Like, I mean, you got to think, as a native English speaker, we took 12 to 13 years of English before college, if we count kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade, not to mention the 5 years of our parents teaching us without even any verb structure or anything like that. And then if you went to college, you took rhetoric and writing even more. So you may have 12 to 15 years of English lessons just to speak the messed up English you already speak.
Exactly.
And that's not perfect. So imagine what your Spanish would sound like, or Arabic or French or whatever. But be comfortable with having a bit of humility. My first sentence that I say to everybody when I first meet them is, hey, I'm sorry, but my Spanish is really bad. But if you talk slowly to me, we'll have a really fun conversation. And I've learned how to say that in Spanish. So I say that right off the bat. That's the best sentence I say in Spanish because it's the one I say the most. But it's helped me out, and it's allowed people to be more empathetic with me. Anything else before we go?
No, I didn't know if this is coming up now, but what about when the pandemic hit?
Oh yeah, that was crazy. The pandemic changed everything because one of the things of learning a language, I'm looking at the person, right? One of my friends here, a girl I met, she says, you're the most attentive person I've ever talked to. I say, no, I read your lips. I really don't care about what you're talking about, but I'm paying attention to what you're saying. So with that being the case, it's important to be, when you're learning, you're using body language like he was saying, but you're also reading lips. Well, when the pandemic happened, everybody got on a mask. So not only are they muted a little bit, but they're also, I can't read their lips anymore. So that's one of the biggest things that happened is that the pandemic just totally kind of threw me off of it, because of the masks.
Yeah, I've always struggled with Spanish. I'm technically fluent, right, in Spanish, but over the phone because you can't read lips. And it's like that in person now with the mask going in. Even when I'm speaking in English to other English speakers, it's muffled. So that's just another barrier. And it's something that, you work your way through and you figure out how to communicate. Communication shouldn't be what's limiting you from moving around.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some of the work? Let's go to the next question. What are some of the working options for working remotely or finding employment abroad so that you can make more money to live comfortably? A lot of people want to move and they want to make money, but they don't want to be barely making money where they can't live a similar. We can take a step down. We don't want to take a step all the way down just to live somewhere else. What are some of the options you know about?
Okay, well, one of the options, because I do work in education. One of the options that you have to consider is teaching English online or teaching online. So if you're a certified teacher, we have something called K-12. With K-12, it actually allows people to be able to teach online through a school district, but these are for people that are being homeschooled. So you almost have to never be there in person. In order to get that particular position, you do have to have a teacher license, right? Another option is VIP Kids, I Teach Group. I can't think of all the names. We can put actually the links in the description of this later. But these are all different programs in which you can teach English to foreigners, usually in China, at all times of day. And it sets up, you make your own schedule. Now, based on like how good you are, I think like the most you can make per hour is like 22 bucks an hour, which back home in LA, Seattle, New York is nothing, right? 22 bucks an hour, you probably laugh at that. Here, that would be good pay, especially if you can probably knock out 25 to 30. If you want to do 40 hours a week, you can. But you would notice that 25 hours a week at 20 bucks an hour would be plenty to live comfortably here and still enjoy it because you don't want to work yourself to death, right? Those are the options I know from working in education. If you want to work remotely, another option is working in international schools, but that's a whole like another set of questions for another day. I'm thinking more like working from home.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I think the first thing you want to do is to make sure you understand what the cost of living is in that city, right? So that you know whether that $20 will work or $10 will work. You know, one of my buddies came down here. He had a huge 6-figure job in LA, came down here, and he found, you know, he could just make $17 an hour teaching on English in China, and that would be enough to cover all of his bills. So that ended up working out for him. So one of the things as an entrepreneur, what I'm going to talk about is like the things in the middle. It's not quite a career, but it's not fully entrepreneurship either, which is freelancing, right? So you can freelance really easily by going onto Upwork. If you go to upwork.com, we'll put a link below, but if you go there, you can search for marketing jobs, you can search for, sales jobs, customer service jobs, just any type of little gig, you can do it on Upwork. And they'll be hourly, some of them they'll tell you it's for 6 months, some of them will tell you they're looking for a long-term person. All of my employees I found on Upwork, and one has worked for me for, this is year 3 now, and the other 2 have been with me for 1 year now. So I found everybody on Upwork, but I also have used Upwork to get little gigs in the meantime, you know, for other projects that I've worked on when I was, you know, like I've used it to find customers for my business. So I would say Upwork is a great place for all types of jobs, but you're going to be working as a freelancer. You're not going to have like benefits and all of that stuff that you get in America, because those benefits don't mean nothing here. Like your American benefits, they don't mean nothing in Colombia.
Yeah, I think another thing that you can consider as well is that if you make a decent living here, if you don't have those benefit packages, you can pay for it out of pocket, and it's a lot cheaper. And a lot of things you can get without a health plan, like dental care, it's really cheap. For example, I got a crown, which I think they quoted me $1,200 in the States. Well, here I paid out of pocket, and I went to one of the more expensive dentist offices here at the time because they spoke English. And even though my Spanish is decent, I don't speak dental Spanish. So when you're doing certain things like going to the doctor, going to the dentist, dealing with lawyers, you kind of want to have it in the language of your native language. And so with that said, I paid out of pocket, I think $230 USD to get a crown. I mean, we're talking about a whole root canal and a crown. It's still as painful as it would be anywhere else. It doesn't change. But you will find out the facilities are really nice. The people are really kind. And people do tourism just to get operations done all the time as far as dental work. Sometimes people operate other things. Cali, where I lived before, Cali, Colombia.
Funk Master Flex was down there. He got liposuction. No, I'm just kidding. He did get liposuction though.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he got liposuction. He put it on Instagram. So he trying to get snatched. He's trying to be an Instagram model, I guess. You know, that DJing thing ain't working out. So you got a few options. You go to job fairs, like he went to job fairs. You can search online and interview. We just had a buddy come down. We just got hired at a school here, a Canadian school here in Colombia. I've helped people to find gigs on Upwork. There's remote.io, which has sales, marketing, software positions, developer positions, customer service positions. There's a lot of places. I'll tell you one of the things I would do. I would go into LinkedIn and go to job postings and type remote. are location independent. And they'll show you all the jobs that are location independent.
And I think we're also leaving out one big aspect. We're in a pandemic, right? And jobs have changed to where people are used to working from home now. I actually have one of my good friends, I talked about him before. He's coming down here next week because his job told him he doesn't have to be in the office until April. So he's in New York City paying thousands of dollars a month for rent. I won't say exactly how much, but an absorbent amount of money for rent. He got out of his lease. He realized he does not have to be back in the office anytime soon. And I was able to find him like some luxurious spots here for less than $1,000 a month. I'm talking about he would pay at least 6, 7, 8K a month in Manhattan for the same type of things. So think about the pandemic, and you can negotiate these things with your current employer. You can actually go to them like, look, I have this opportunity to live abroad for 3 to 4 months. Because you have to realize if you don't have a work visa here, for example, you only get 180 days anyway. So you might want to take, 90 of those days and try out here. Take another 90 days and try out China. Go somewhere else, try out Africa, go to the motherland. So let the pandemic work for you in that aspect. Obviously, it's been a horrible situation, but there's still some benefits that come out of it to where you can, and that will give you an idea if it's something you want to do for a long, long term. And 3 months is decent enough to get a real good grant. It's better than a vacation, but it's not the same as living permanently.
Yeah. So that takes me to the next question. How long can you stay in another country without a visa?
That really depends on the country, but most places, well, they'll originally tell you that you have 90 days, right? They'll tell you have 90 days to stay there without a visa, and then you can go and apply for an extension. I actually lived in the Dominican Republic for a year without a visa. And I was working there, but my job was kind of janky, so they never gave me a visa. Every time I left the country, I had to pay a fee, and I had to, every time I came back, I had to show proof of a return flight to the States. So I was able to actually finagle an entire year being there. I think I went home 3 times during that time period. So I did a whole full 360 days without ever having a visa. So it really depends on the country and how you can finagle it, but usually you can get up to half a year without a visa.
Yeah, there are several countries. If you were to Google what countries accept the U.S. passport, and they have like this treaty where they'll allow people into their country with the U.S. passport for up to 180 days in a calendar year. So on January 1st, that 180 days resets. So I think that's good for people to know. Again, go and test the place out. Go and visit for a weekend, learn about it, see if it's someplace you want to be before you start applying for a visa and all these complicated things. Because there's investment visas. Here in Colombia, there's probably 40 different visas you can get. You can get tourist visa, education visa, investment visa, retirement visa. Yeah, I mean, you can have married, you can get a
education visa.
Yeah, it's everything. It's 1,000 of them, right? They got all these different visas, but you would just never know. So Google, find out if it's a place you want to go before you go through that visa process, and understand that you may have up to 180 days to decide what process you want to go through before you end up like me, where you may be getting deported.
And being the lifeguards that we are, I'm gonna tell you caution on certain waters. Do not marry someone just to get a visa. It's never that serious. Definitely don't have a kid. That's an 18-year commitment just to get a visa. And obviously don't do in the reverse. Don't come down here and marry somebody and take them to the States because you will get those. I actually have not encountered that. People ask me that all the time. When people try to marry you just for a green card, as they say. And it's like, nah, that's something that might happen if you're just going into the hood to go find dates. But yeah, I do a better selection process.
Most people I've run into, they just want to visit the U.S. They love where they're from. Like they have, national pride in where they're from. They're not like, no, I can't wait to get out of here. No, they like me here. They like, I'll go visit. I'll go visit the 3 cities they know, but they don't want to leave and never see their family again. So, that's just a bit of American arrogance. Sometimes we think, oh, everybody trying to get here. No, they not. They not trying to go in the snow. Just like we trying to stay in the snow. So the next question, how did you find a place to live if you don't speak the language and you don't know the neighborhood?
I mean, I think the internet has just changed everything. Obviously, that's very notable, given the year that we're in. But one choice you have is Airbnb. I know in the States, Airbnb has been outed out as racist, and it's not Airbnb. That's just the States. It's the people that don't want, seriously, the people that don't want to rent out their house. Airbnb as a platform, they have all these policies, they have all these different things, and we don't discriminate. And they really, as a company, don't have any type of desire to discriminate. I can't really speak for them. It's kind of like Starbucks. It's like, no, Starbucks is not racist in and of itself. It's the people that work at Starbucks, right? So here, international, you do get some of that American privilege, that passport privilege that once they know that you're from the States, that, oh yeah, he's paying with dollars, let's let him in. So look at Airbnb, read reviews. The reviews will say it all. And actually on Airbnb, it will say if the owner speaks English. And if they don't, I mean, that shouldn't stop you either, because there's always Google Translate. But you can find out. You got the super host. He used to be a super host in St. Louis with Airbnb. Those are the people that have been, visited. He can speak to this better than I could. But I've been using Airbnb since 2012, before it was popular to use Airbnb. You can check my profile, and you see I go back to my first trip to the DR. I used Airbnb. I think that's a really good one to use.
Yeah, I would just start there, because Airbnb is the easiest one. Right? You can find a place, you can test it out. One of my tips on Airbnb is never rent a place for a month, right? Up front. Because I had a place in Cali, Colombia, and when I went to the place, I was going to rent it for a month, but I learned the hard way that Airbnb doesn't give you your money back if you rent beyond 30 days and you cancel. So if you cancel, you kind of screwed, So one of the things that I figured out is if you go in, reserve the place for 90 days ahead of time, right? And for one day, that'll give you the host like phone number and address so you can talk to them and ask them, hey, look, because I used to always say, look, I do a lot of recording. I'm always on calls because I'm working remotely. I can't afford to have crappy internet or noise. Right? Well, this one house was right next to the expressway. And when they showed it to me, it was at 8 o'clock at night. So it was quiet. I'm like, all right, cool. I reserved it for 2 days, use it by formula, reserve it for 2 nights so I can see a full 48 hours how it worked. At 6 a.m., all these trucks started coming down the expressway. And it was like that until 6 p.m. And I'm like, oh, no, this doesn't work because I'm going to get all this feedback in my microphones and my calls are going to be trash. And I don't want to wake up at 6 a.m. every day because of the traffic. So one of the things is try Airbnb, but don't reserve it for a month. Again, take that vacation, right? Go and visit, see what the places are, understand the neighborhoods, read the reviews because people are very candid in the reviews and they will give people a 1-star or a 3-star. They'll tell you whether they had hot water, ants, roaches, whether the building looked like the pictures. They'll give you all of that stuff on Airbnb. And at the beginning, I would tell people, look for Superhost. Superhost have to have, I think, 25 consecutive 5-star visits. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to get 5-star visits, not to mention 25. So you got to get like 25 consecutive 5-star visits in order to be a Superhost. Their rating doesn't have to be perfect 5, but over a period of time, they had to have improved to get a certain number of 5-star visits in a row. So you know that they have a quality place. Now, they may charge a little bit more because they've removed all the risk for you, right? They've taken care of all the things you may be concerned about. So one of the things I would do, again, look at Airbnb. Never rent for 30 days if you haven't stayed in the place. Rent it for 2 days. See what it's like. And then guess what? You got the person's phone number. You can get rid of that Airbnb fee by just negotiating outside of that. Like my place I live in here, I sent the guy a message. It was like, yo, I want to check out the spot. I rented it for a day, went and visited, canceled, got the money back, renegotiated. I told him I was going to be here for 6 months. He gave me off the book rate that was 30% cheaper than Airbnb. And it's month to month. So I'm not committed to it. I can move whenever I want. And, I've been there now for actually a year. It's a year today. I moved in December 1st, 2019. But it's been on that process of what I just explained. If you want more about that, put it in the comments, and I'll make a whole nother video giving you the script and everything of what I did for Airbnb.
So another option outside of Airbnb would be getting on one of those sites about Black people living abroad or expats abroad and finding someone that can help you that is bilingual. These are people that take a small fee in comparison to what we would consider a fee. I actually have a friend named Yurani who is completely bilingual, and this is what she does. She helps people get stuff notarized, translated. She goes with them to help them find apartments. And what we're talking about for like a whole day of work, we're talking 20, 25 bucks. And that's somebody, she'll help you find some place that's safe, that's comfortable, that's fully furnished, and month to month. like what he's speaking about. So, it could be Airbnb. You could go a different route. Maybe you had a bad experience in the States and left a bad taste in your mouth, and you want to go a different route. You can do that as well. But I would stick with that. Airbnb for me is the most trusted site that I've used for travel.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So we want to give you the simple route. We can give you all the options. Google has more options than what we can tell you about. But we usually try to tell you about things that we've done. One of the things that I hate is people, oh man, you should do this. You ever did it? Nah, but I heard it. Well, I don't care what you say, man. Like, you lose all your credibility with me if you give me some advice you ain't never done. So I always try to tell people things that I've done. Like, no, I can show you I've done this. If I haven't done it, I say, hey man, I don't know, but I've heard, or look at Google. Go Google, because I would rather them be misled by somebody else than me.
Right. That's true.
So let's go to the next question. Let's see. How do you get around in these places if you don't have a car?
I mean, this thing right here, because we're in the
Your
2000s.
iPhone drives?
My iPhone, it actually does. This is the new upgrade. Actually, I still have the XR. Have no plans on getting the 12 Pro.
You have an Apple Card?
I have the Apple Card. Now, I have the Apple Card. No, I mean, there's so many different apps for transportation. One thing you'll realize for a lot of modern cities outside of the States especially is that public transportation is cheap. Uber back home, I was in Atlanta a couple of years ago. I was leaving the club after having a Hennessy shower. And I got home from an Uber. I checked my statement the next day, $70.
Wow.
They hit me with the, what's that called? The surge. Right?
Yeah.
They hit me with the surge. Now, it was a lot cheaper than that DUI I was about to get had I driven, because I had to take an Uber back to get my car, which was like $25, right?
That's $100.
You're talking about, almost $100 in Uber fees. So I'll tell you, it's funny. I had a couple of my friends come down in the town from New York, and I got all the Ubers the whole time because I had the data plan. But not only that, is that I knew where we were going because I lived in Cali, Colombia, and I knew where we were going back and forth. So I went ahead and paid for all the Ubers the entire trip. So one of my guys was like, all right, I'm going to send you some money for all those Ubers. So he sends me an absorbent amount of money via PayPal. It's like $250, $300. I showed him the printout. All the Ubers we took back and forth for like a 4-day trip. We're talking 4 guys. Sometimes we had to take 2 cars. $40. $1.87. $2.30. The most expensive one I think we have is like $6. Now back and forth from the airport is a different thing, and we can cover that later. But it was more of a situation to where it's so cheap to use. I don't use Uber anymore. I use Didi, which is a Chinese-based company. They have taxi services, which are pretty cheap, and then most of them take cards. They have something called InDriver. I mean, there's so many different applications.
No matter where you are, there's going to be Uber. Uber's going to be in almost every country, right? So just like we recommend Airbnb, start with Uber. Start there, and then you'll learn because some of the things that InDriver and all those, they may not be available in the States, or Didi may not be available in the States, like Lyft isn't available here. So we know Uber's there. We know Airbnb is there. Try those, and then when you land, wherever you are, you'll add those other apps, right? Yeah. And the cool thing about it is that Uber, we already know how to use it. We've already been trained on it, right? The other thing is that you don't have to worry about getting ripped off because Uber will show you the fee ahead of time. I took a taxi here in Colombia from this park called Parque Lleras, which is a 6-minute walk from my house. But I had someone with me. We had just left the restaurant, hopped in the taxi. The taxi charged me 13,000 pesos to go like a 6-minute walk, which is like a 2-minute car ride. And I'm like, dude, you totally ripped me off. He was like, man, that's what it says. I'm like, dude, I've taken this trip 13 times. It's like 5,000 with the tip,
5,000 pesos is $1.50, by the way.
Exactly. But to have to pay 13,000 to go that distance, you know how close that is. No, I got ripped. I paid almost $5 for it. So I'm like, all right. So Uber eliminates that, right? They do have their surges and their different things, but at least you know what you're gonna pay ahead of time, and you're not just making up some random prices. Because I know in Cartagena, everything is 10 mil in Cartagena. Yeah. They just, no matter where you go, hey, I'm going back to Medellin, 10 mil. I'm going down the street, 10 mil. Everything is 10,000 pesos in Cartagena. They just make up the price.
In Cartagena, they don't have meters in the taxis, and they don't have Uber. They do have InDriver, which you can negotiate the price. One thing I would suggest, no matter where you're going, make sure you have like a card or a piece of paper with the address. Because what you'll find out is if you don't speak the language well, when you say it out loud, they won't understand what you're saying. So make sure you have something written that shows how to get from point A to point B. Because if not, for me, for example, I've always had a hard time rolling my R's. And every street I've ever lived on is carrera. which, you got to roll your R's when you're saying that sounded horrible coming out of my mouth right now. And so what I've learned to do is just show them the card or find landmarks, right? So like, hey, it's close to the McDonald's on this street, or it's close to this, and that'll get you close to it.
Yeah, I think that's great things. I don't carry a card, but I always have the address in my notes on my iPhone, so I just show them the phone, like, look, I'm going here, and they can read, so they know where to go. We're just trying to eliminate the barriers, right? So we got Uber, we got Airbnb for housing, Uber for getting around. I think those are good suggestions.